I'd like to discuss the concept that leadership is a lifelong journey. It's a 24-hour journey. You don't turn off leadership when you get off work. It has to be who you are. And it's interesting as you think about it that character is the foundation of leadership. And if you are, quote, a good supervisor at the job, but you neglect your family, you neglect your hobbies, you neglect your friends when you get off. That doesn't make any sense because if it is truly grounded in your character, then you should be a leader in everything you do. And I think Kevin Gilmartin, obviously in his book on emotional survival for law enforcement and their families, he hit this hard and heavy that when you see men and women swear in to become police officers, he mentions the statement. He said, look at their faces. Look how motivated they are. Look how much they are proud of the fact they're police officers or deputies or what are troopers or whatever. But he said, when you pass one of them later in the hallway and you say, how's it going, Frank? They go, whatever. You see their attitude has changed. You see that you look at the problem employee and the toxic nature of his relationship at work. He can't get over what happened 12 years ago. That we have to be maintained in our ability to always be we people, not me people. You have to fight the natural inclination that it's about me. And when cops come in, they get swept up in the mission, this new family, dealing with the public and dealing with one of the most exciting jobs in the world. But what you'll find is, and I think all cops are very prone to this, we neglect the other hours of our lives. And when we go home, we're tired, as Gil Martin talks about at the bottom of the emotional roller coaster. The person who was funny and engaging and solved problems out on the streets is now home and just wants to sit in the chair and watch TV. And if a little boy wants his dad to throw the ball with him, he goes, I'm tired. He's a different person. And what Gil Martin's book, and it is probably one of the most powerful books ever written for law enforcement. I've had so many people in my career tell me that book changed their lives, that what we have to do is we have to maintain the things in our lives that made us good cops when we first came in. We had that family, we have our kids, we have our friends, we go work out at the gym. We have hobbies. We love to fish. We love to ride our bikes. But as we get focused on the job, those things begin to drop off and we lose our balance. And obviously the worst example of that is when a problem employee becomes consumed about that he or she didn't get promoted, they transferred them out of narcotics and they want to stay in narcotics. And their whole focus is on being a victim. And they become angry. But the reason they become angry is because they put everything into the job. And this job was never meant to love you and provide everything you needed. That's what your family's for. That's what your friends are for. That's what your hobbies are for. And that's why we have to maintain our physical fitness. And when that doesn't happen, we change and it's not for the good. We lose our balance and we must always maintain what's going on in the rest of our lives, not just about work. We don't need to become like many problems employees do, but I've seen regular cops do that. And when they come home, they stop riding their bike, they stop spending time with their friends, they're too tired. And the next thing you know, they've lost this balance. And obviously, as Gil Martin so wonderfully talks about in his book, he talks about how to not let that happen, to maintain a balance in our lives. And I want to also mention that one of the reasons we need to do this is because we're not going to always be working at the department. We're going to retire. And given the life expectancy today, many people are going to spend almost as much time not working as they did in their careers. And they're going to see they don't know how to live without the job. And you know, and COVID showed us this, that when we couldn't be around people, when we couldn't do our normal going out to eat with our friends at breakfast and stuff, it was not good for us. And the job shouldn't be the center of our lives. And many cops make it that way. And as Gilmartin talks about, not only do we lose our balance, but we take our job too seriously. We become cynical, angry people. And at the end of the day, again, leadership is something that you do all the time. You must every day, 24 hours a day, have men and women in your life that you invest in, that they invest in you, that you remind yourself it's important to go hang out with your family after you get home from work, even if you're tired, that you need to discipline yourself to to maintain those relationships that are really important to you, but you don't act like it. As I looked at this, I thought about my father-in-law, and in my first book on challenging the organizational culture, I mentioned my father-in-law was Nick Lester. He was very successful in his career with the federal government, an effective manager. But that was only a small part of his life. He played softball until his 80s. He always loved to work out in the yard. He always invested in his family. My wife said that when he would come home from work with the federal government, he had a long commute as well. He would be in a suit. He would have taken his coat as he got in the car to come home, but as if they ran up to him and said, "Hey, Dad, would you hit us some fly balls?" Because they all love to play sports. He said, "Sure." And he would fold up his coat, put it on the hood of the car, and go in the backyard and hit softballs to his children. He was never too busy or too tired from work to not invest in the most important relationships he had, which was his family. And he always spent time with his wife and kids. And guess what happened when he retired? He was a happy man because he had maintained those important relationships and hobbies. He still played softball until his 80s. I used to ask him, I said, "Well, how does that work?" He said, "Well, you know, I can still hit the ball off the fence, but now they throw me out before I get to first base." And I mean, he had an amazing sense of humor. He loved people, and even as his health began to deteriorate, he had trained himself for so long to take care of people around him, to love people around him, that unlike many older people who can be cranky and mean, he was always loving even till the end. And my one of my favorite stories about this is he lived only 3 doors down there in the latter part of his life. So he was right down, he was only a couple of houses away from our house. And his wife called me and said, "I think Nick has had a stroke. He's having trouble speaking and he's having trouble walking." Well, I told my wife to call the fire department. We live in a rural area. And I ran down there, and sure enough, he's kind of dragging his foot. And I said, "Mr. Lester," I said, "what happened?" He said, "I think I had a stroke. I feel like somebody slugged me on the left side of my head, and I'm struggling." I said, "Well, you need to sit down." And so as he sat down, I said, "Mr. Lester, I've called the fire department." This was about 2 in the morning. He looked at me with an appalled look on his face and said, "But they were there, they were asleep. At this time in the morning, they were asleep." And what hit me was, in the midst of this medical emergency, he still focused on other people. And it was interesting as they came in, as the fire department arrived, and about five firefighters came into the house, and they stood in front of him. As they started asking him questions, the first thing out of his mouth was, "I am so sorry I woke you up." If you could have seen the look on their faces, they were so amazed at a man going through a medical emergency that was focused on them, not himself. And I really do believe this is true of all the emergencies those firefighters had gone through in their careers. They will always remember that one because he was special. Why was he special? Because he maintained a balance in his life, relationships in his life, and never let his job be his identity. His identity was in his family, his hobbies and having fun playing softball, his friends, and he was also effective at work because he had that balance that when he left work, he left work. And we all need to learn from that. If you really think about it, what you're doing when you maintain balance in your life is strengthening this we belief that it's not about me. And when we practice it and practice it and practice it and have other people in our lives hold us accountable, and that we maintain relationships and families and fitness, what ends up happening is it becomes so much part of our lives that it becomes our character that has been strengthened and maintained for so long, even when we have a stroke or we lose our job or we go through other crises, we still maintain our focus on other people and not ourselves. But if this is just a kind of a temporary thing where you're not maintaining it 24 hours a day, then the real you is not that attractive. We have to maintain our priority that it's not about us. We're not kings and queens. It's about the people around us. And we need to have people in our lives who make sure that they throw us back in the ring when we get focused on ourselves. And if we do that, we will bless those people around us, whether at work or at home or among our friends and hobbies. We've got to maintain it. We've got to maintain it and strengthen it to the point that it becomes our manner of life, the ruts in the road that we've created that are so powerful that in spite of illness and loss and tragedy, we still move forward. Leadership means to move. And the only way we're going to keep moving for our entire life and our 24 hours a day is by practicing not being about ourselves, spending time with people intentionally in our family and our friends and our hobbies. And if we do that, we can live at the end without regrets. But if we don't do that, we're going to have a tough time as we get older and are no longer at work. Pay attention to every aspect of your life, not just the job. This job was not meant to love you back. Thanks for joining us on the They to We Leadership podcast. If today's episode helped you think differently about management, take a moment to reflect and then apply it. Because real leadership isn't what you say, it's what you do next. And the real enemy is our pride and blindness on how we are really doing. Only with the help of others can we truly make an impact on those around us.